Welcome back to Microsoft Project. This is our 6th video in Lesson 6, Fine-Tuning Resources. So we just went through how to manually adjust for an overallocation of resources, but we can also get Microsoft Project to help us out with this, and that's called leveling, and that's how Project will help us fix overallocations. So if you go to your resource sheet view, so remember in our views, just go to resource sheet. That'll bring up your whole list of resources. This is where we entered them in the first place. As we assign people and equipment to tasks, they can get over allocated. They show up in red. They get this little bad guy. This resource is over allocated. So if you page through our resource sheet, you can see that there's a few people who are over allocated here. So how do we get Project to help us? We are going to use our resource tab and go over here to leveling options. Click that open. And we want to make sure that our settings fit the ones that are on page 135. So leveling calculations should be manual, look for over calculations on a day-by-day basis. Minute by minute and hour by hour would be like really intense. If you were doing a long project, you might want to look for those over allocations on a week by week basis. That's probably the happy medium there. But for our purposes here, we're going to do it day by day. We want to make sure clear leveling values before leveling is checked. We want to establish a leveling range for the entire project. When you think about this, maybe you want to take it a month at a time and kind of and go that way and just do it in chunks. But for our purposes here, we're going to do the entire project. Leveling order should be standard, and we're going to select leveling can adjust individual assignments on a task, and leveling can create splits in remaining work. All the other options we want to leave blank. I'm going to click the Level All button and see what happens to our over allocated resources. You can see instantly that some of those issues have disappeared. Brad Sutton, he was over allocated, and now that's gone. Well, what happened? Well, Project went in and adjusted the different tasks by our prioritization and the duration and the task relationships, and went ahead and adjusted our timeline so that those people weren't allocated to so many things going on at the same time. So Brad's not over allocated anymore. Jim Kim, he was over allocated. He's not over allocated anymore. But there's still a few issues. So Florian, Don, and the dancers still have over allocations. And in this case, this is probably due to being assigned work during their normal non-working times. So we're going to go back to our leveling Gantt view and see if we can fix things that way. So go to Team Planner, go to Leveling Gantt, open that, and this is our view that we get here. We want to go down to, I want to see what has happened here to our various tasks. You notice that each task now has a tan bar and a blue bar, and it might be helpful to look at the bars for, like, say, task 66 here. So everybody go to 66, and if you zoom in on that, you'll see that the tan and the blue don't exactly mesh up. The tan bar, that represents what the pre-leveled task was. So before we just did that leveling process, the tan bar was the duration for the task. Now you can see that the sound or logging audio tracks by scene has been extended, and it's going actually farther. And that has to do with those resources that were allocated Jim Kim was one of those guys who was over allocated. So this probably adjusting this duration and adjusting how long this task lasts probably has to do with Jim's workload and what else he was working on at the time. So now it's going to take a little bit longer because Jim only has so many hours in a day that he's going to work. And now we can see that the blue bar has shifted over. And then that next task, task 67, isn't going to start until that one's done. So you can see what the old version was before we leveled the tasks and what the new version is, how project has changed those for us, and how it's extended our timeline out. So it looks like our last task, or our second to last task, send copy to AV master, blah, 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 was supposed to end like July 29th if we hover over it. But now that's not actually happening until like the 3rd of August. And that's all due to the leveling of those resources that we had during that time frame.